I love to travel. I especially love to travel to Europe, see other countries, experience the cultures they have, and really entrench myself into as much of the local environment as I can. Enjoy the homemade foods that they make because they're so different and they're so fresh and authentic compared to what we get in the United States. There's a lot of junk in the food that we eat, even at restaurants. And I find the foods in Europe are much cleaner and pure. I like to go on adventures and experience things in life.
There's some dunes and so,
That's fun.
but it's a smaller one than this.
I'm Teresa. I live in Massachusetts. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2013, and I'm a four-time cancer survivor. In 2008 was the time of the great financial crisis. And during that time, I had lost my six-figure job in the tech industry. Like many people were losing their jobs at that time. I have a background in fitness and I picked up training individuals outside. We spent a ton of time outside. At that time, I lived in California. That's where I'm from. And during that time, you put sunscreen on your body, but you really don't think about putting sunscreen on your lips. At least I wasn't at that time. My lips were always chapped. And I might put some moisturizer on my lips after being outside for a period of time. But I noticed a pimple on my lip and it looked like it had something in it that could be extracted. I tried to extract it myself and it was so painful. I had small tears coming out of my eyes. A good friend of mine was an esthetician. I asked her to take a look at it and she's, you know what? I would go get that looked at. I don't know what that is. So I went to my general practitioner. He took one look at it and said, I think we need to see a dermatologist. When I saw the dermatologist, he took a biopsy and I'm thinking, what is this? Is it a pimple? Is it a small cyst? What are we talking about? And all he said is, I'm not real sure. That's why we're doing the biopsy. We'll check it out and give you a call if it's anything concerning. The next day, it was early in the morning. I was flying down the freeway, heading to an appointment in the Bay Area. And my cell phone rings. I pick it up, and the nurse says, Hi, Teresa. Do you have a couple minutes to chat? This is the dermatologist's office. And I was like, yeah, sure. Again, not expecting anything. And instead, she said, I'm calling to tell you that you have lip cancer. So imagine flying down the freeway, getting this unexpected news. It was extremely shocking. What they performed was Mohs surgery. Never thought that I would have cancer again. It was one of those moments, life throws you some curveballs. That was my curveball, and life goes on. I was looking in the mirror, and at that time, I was competing in the bodybuilding competition. So my body fat was 10%. I was really lean. I wasn't having any menstrual cycles during that time. And my chest was somewhere between a B and a C. But I noticed that my left breast looked larger. And because I was 47, I thought maybe I'm entering menopause. I have no idea when that's going to strike. Maybe this is some hormonal event that's happening just on the left side. I would shower and there would be pain when the water would be on the breast itself. And I thought, God, this almost feels like pregnancy. Clearly, I was not pregnant. I started to examine my breast and thought, what's going on? How come it's so much bigger than the left side? I felt this rock. They describe breast cancer as a lump. This was not a lump. This was a solid mass that felt like anything that's a hard surface, the wall, a door, a desk. I had a girlfriend come over. She felt it and she's, holy shit, what is that? And we're like, maybe it's a cyst. Again, that seems to be the default answer here. At that point, I'd been traveling quite a bit for work. I did have an OB/GYN appointment scheduled that I thought about canceling because the amount of traveling I was doing. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to keep that appointment because I don't know, maybe if I'm going through menopause or if this is a cyst, we should just take care of whatever the situation is. I saw the doctor. I could see the change in his face when he felt it. He went from having a happy conversation with me. This is somebody who delivered all my kids. I knew him well, to being pretty serious. I said, "Is this something we should be concerned about?" And he said, "I think you need to get a mammogram." And it had been about 3 years since my last mammogram. I blew all that off, even though I had received lots of reminders about it. I had the mammogram. They called me back in for another mammogram and they said, "Do you feel what we see on this mammogram?" Absolutely, no doubt, 100%. They then sent me in to have an ultrasound. This is same day, same hospital. During the ultrasound, the tech walked out of the room, came back with a radiologist, and she looked at me and said, "We want you to step out and grab some lunch. If you want to have a little wine with your lunch, that might be good because we're going to do a biopsy on your breast." I have no idea what they're going to find here, right? Because in my brain, I'm thinking if it's breast cancer, everyone talks about a lump. This isn't a lump, this is a rock. So my girlfriend and I went out for lunch and we took her advice and had a little bit of a liquid lunch with a glass of wine, came back. It was then they did the biopsy. They have a large TV screen in the room so you can actually see what they're doing because they're looking at the screen as a guide to actually get that needle inside the mass they saw. And sure enough, the next morning, it was very similar to the call that I got when I was diagnosed with lip cancer. And she said, "Are you alone? Is this a good time for you to talk?" And I knew at that point, I bet I have cancer. It just felt like the same day all over again. And she said, "We're calling to let you know that the biopsy came back positive and you have breast cancer." When you get a diagnosis like that, I don't care how many times you get it, the reaction is the same. You become paralyzed in the moment. Your ears stop listening and you go in your own head and you think, "I'm going to die. I'm 6 feet under," and you're planning your funeral. And looking back, you don't even have enough information at that point to plan your funeral because you don't know the extent or the lack of the extent of the cancer at that time. There's a army of appointments that you have to go to for different tests. You meet with a variety of doctors. That's the oncologist. You also meet with the plastic surgeon and you meet with a breast surgeon. There's a pretty extensive team that takes your case that you meet with to talk through the what's next. And when we met with the plastic surgeon and the breast surgeon, we share what your options are. One option is you can do a lumpectomy. The other option is you can do a bilateral mastectomy, which means remove both breasts. The other option is remove one breast and put an implant in, or take tissue from your back and build a breast out of it. If there's not enough tissue, we can build from the thigh or the buttocks. You have all these options, and it's confusing to decide what's the best path. My grandmother had breast cancer. My mother had breast cancer. I now had breast cancer, and there's no genetic trace of BRCA, either of the females in my family. So they call this familia or environmental cancer. That's the reason that this happened. It's not genetic. I'm just going to take off both breasts because I'm going to eliminate the chances of ever having breast cancer again. I decided I'd go with reconstruction. That means they would remove the breast during the surgical procedure. They would put expanders in. Think of it as an empty implant they fill with saline over a period of time. Once the expanders have stretched out the skin after they've completely removed your breasts, Then they insert the implants. They call it bilateral mastectomy with reconstruction. And that's the path that I chose. It was a pretty long journey. I had 11 fills. That took quite a bit of time for them to fill the expanders to get them to a point where I felt comfortable with the size. I didn't want to be too small. I didn't want to be too big. I just wanted to be just right. The journey from being diagnosed with breast cancer through my reconstruction took about 12 months. We talk about treatment, we think of chemotherapy, we think of radiation or drug therapy. My particular cancer was not reactive to chemotherapy. There was a test at the time, it was called the Oncotype DX test. And what that test does is it allowed them to send the tumor to a lab to test chemotherapy on the tumor itself and see if the tumor changed. And there was no change in the tumor. Chemotherapy was optional for me, and I chose not to do it because I had seen other friends go through chemotherapy, and I just thought, if I don't have to do that, I'm not going to. I felt like I did everything by removing my breasts. I didn't require radiation, but I did require drug therapy, and the drug that they chose was tamoxifen. That's a drug that they typically put women on who have had hormonal cancer like I did. I was ER/PR positive. I had started the therapy during the breast reconstruction and had a really bad reaction. I was experiencing some liver failure. So the recommendation was go off the drug, finish your reconstruction, and once that's done and your body's healed, go back on the tamoxifen. In 2014, I started back on tamoxifen and started to have a lot of weird symptoms. It was almost like a roller coaster of events, everything from heart palpitations that had me in and out of the ER over a period of 2 years where I was experiencing some minor strokes. There was a time when I was in Vegas for a trade show. I had the worst headache of my life. I had been seen by many doctors, many ER visits. My entire face had drooped down all the way through my lip and my chin. And none of these doctors knew what it was. It was absolutely crazy. I had things like, oh, you might be allergic to the desert. You might have some problems with your esophagus, things that had nothing to do with the structure of my face. Eventually, we found a doctor through my own advocacy and doing my own research. I found somebody who had a great deal of experience with white matter on the brain. That was one of the things that we saw on the scans. He went through a full exam. He confirmed that you've had a couple of strokes. Now, all this time, I knew that one of the biggest side effects of tamoxifen is a stroke, among many other things. I had also experienced heart issues that turned out to be what I now have as atrial tachycardia. And that's a type of heart arrhythmia that causes your heart to go from a low BPM all the way into the hundreds. It's not life threatening for me. I spent years in and out of hospitals and finding the right specialist. They ruled out AFib. Between all those doctor visits and being diagnosed with several strokes, and then learning through one of my scans that I had two brain aneurysms that they believed were also part of my side effects to tamoxifen, it was time to go off the drug. It was causing my body more harm. And here I was trying to stay alive and not get cancer again. And I had all these other life threatening events happen alongside. I did end up having a craniotomy. I remember sitting with the plastic surgeon after the surgery when I had my first follow up appointment with her, and I'm all bandaged up. I've got 4 grenades taped to my chest that are drains to make sure there's no infection, to let all that fluid come out and help with any inflammation. And she said, we're going to take these bandages off, and then you're going to be in this bra for quite some time. I want you to look at your breast when you get home. And I thought, are you freaking crazy? I'm not going to look. I don't want to see. In my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to see some concaved chest that's really jacked up. My cousin was with me. We were holding hands in my bathroom and we took the bra off and looked. We both cried. And what we saw was not a disaster at all. In fact, it was quite pretty, to be honest. The work that they did was amazing. My chest was completely flat. There were scars across the chest. And I think I was crying for a couple reasons, and I might get emotional now. As a female, having your breasts is what gives us an identity as a female. And in that moment, it was just a joyous moment because we saw something that was better looking than we expected. But I had lost something that was mine and was a part of me and was a part of my body. And saying goodbye was really difficult in that moment. Of course, after the implants were put in, there was a lot of joy because I'm in my 40s and I'm feeling blessed that I even had the option to put breast implants in to give me back that identity that so many of us latch onto as a woman. After I finished treatment, it was January of 2019. My radiologist had said, "You've been through a lot in life. You should find a way to celebrate that you've made it through, and also a way to release all the emotions that have come along with this." I had a big celebration in Napa Valley with some of my closest friends and their husbands. It was incredible. We all cried our eyes out, but we also made peace with everything that I had been through. So it was super cool. But then in August of 2019, when I went in for a standard skin cancer check, they found melanoma. And we're not even a year out from my last diagnosis. I think I was numb at that point. I didn't have any reaction other than, how bad is it? What are we going to do about it? Once again, we find ourselves with a plastic surgeon who, I've got a zipper down my spine. That's where they found the melanoma, but I was really fortunate. We did catch it early. It was shaped like a cone, so it was heading into the lymphatic system, but they removed it all. Life goes on. I recover from the craniotomy, and it's about 5 years later after my first breast cancer. At that time, they were calling survival 10 years. I didn't make it to the 10-year point. I was changing my shirt. I felt something on my left breast, the same breast that had the tumor on it. And it felt like a pea size, but it was that same feeling. It was that rock. I called my plastic surgeon because I thought it's something lumpy in the implant. And she said, "I think you should go see your GP and getting some scans." And of course, when I called the GP, they said, "You should go to your oncologist." And at that point, I'm thinking, oh my God, here we go again. It was a little bit more traumatic this time because I'm dealing with yet another health issue potentially in this moment. I had already started to freak out before we even got the "you have breast cancer again" call. And at that point, you're thinking, what do you do? Because am I going to have to remove the implants? Am I going to have to be flat chested? What's the treatment plan for a recurrence when you don't really have a lot of breast tissue? I'm mostly all implant. And they said, what we do is an excision. Think of it as a laparoscopy. It's where they go in and they get rid of the tumor. This time, we're all taking it much more seriously. With my first diagnosis, they did check my lymph nodes and they were clear. So there was no cancer anywhere else in my body. They wanted to do that again this time because There's always a high probability when you have breast cancer multiple times that it can spread. That's what made this scarier. Is it in my brain? Is it in my lungs? Where else is it? We did bone scans. We did just about every scan to make sure that there was no other cancer in my body, and we didn't see anything. What they did say is the cancer is all over your chest wall, which the only way to get rid of it is through radiation. I had radiation for 3 months. And at that time, I was thinking I got off scot free because I don't have to have chemo. Chemotherapy and radiation have their own side effects. Imagine every single day you're getting zapped, sometimes 6 days a week. First of all, your entire chest gets fried. They radiated me from my sternum all the way through my back. So I was as red as you can imagine, like a beet. It's painful, but that kind of radiation starts to break down a lot of things in your body. So you do lose some hair, nothing like chemotherapy. Your skin's changing all over your body because you've got this chemical in your body. As a result, I went through some depression. I didn't think this was the end of the road for me. What might happen next? They reassured me with 3 months of radiation, we've done everything that we could possibly do to ensure that you won't get a reoccurrence. There's never guarantees when it comes to cancer. But here I am. I'm 6 years out. Hope to me means that you can rise above anything that you're faced with. I feel as though it's about the strength that we have to dig deep within ourselves to find. If you want something so bad, you'll achieve it, you'll overcome it. And I live by this motto, not today life. And I think that's something anyone who's going through something hard should lean into. Don't give up on yourself. Surround yourself with people who are going to lift you up, who are going to support you, who are going to show up, who are going to be there for you. I don't care how hard something is, find a way to laugh, bring in all your funny friends. Don't forget to advocate for yourself. If something's going on with you and doctors don't know what it is, keep searching because somebody's going to listen and you're going to get the answers.